Okay, quick tutorial on how to solder dial feet on dial blanks. Dial feet, dial blank. End product looks like this. Plate, 2 dial feet, 2 samples came in. There's 2 holes, there's 4 holes, sorry. 2 for ETA 6497-98 and 2 for the Molnias, the Russian movements. You notice on this dial plate, back plate, there's a small hole there. That's because this plate is a millimeter thick, and with this plate you don't have to cut the seconds hand on movements. This one right now set up for 6497, and I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Notice that this one is only half a millimeter thick. Do 2 thicknesses because I wasn't sure which one was the best, and I think this is going to be the one. Right now the diameters are set for Rivers 3-piece case assemblies. Alright, we start with the type of cleaner that we're going to use, the flux. It's a Stay Bright flux. It's the same flux that I use to do the, actually I'm wearing it right now, to solder the lugs on that 3646. So, we start with a little bit of flux. Unfortunately for this, you're going to need a jig. The jig can be the eraser type that I think Pompey had put out a while ago, and that would work also. If you're going to make a jig, an aluminum jig, you got to create a little step here, because if you leave it flat like this and put the dial on it, the heat transfer is going to be too fast from the dial to the block of aluminum, and you'll never get the part hot enough. So what you want to do is create a little emboss like that and make a little pin in the middle so that the dial stays centered. And what you want to do is, if you're going to make one of these, that is, you want to drill the holes to the depth of how much you want the pins to stick out. You notice the pins go in the holes. Dial goes into the jig. Find the correct position. Put the pins in the hole. Stand it up. What I've done also is I've taken silver solder and I've wrapped it around a pin, the same pin as I'm using on the movement pins. I did that with it. Once I've done that, I've cut them in little pieces, like so, and it becomes child's play to take one of them and drop it on the pin. Another trick is to apply the flux, is to create a little loop on your solder, something like that, a closed loop. And through capillary action, you can actually pick up the flux and deposit it exactly where you want. With this, we start the torch. Now, what you don't want to do is put the flame on the flux, because if you put the flame on the flux, you're going to burn it and it's not going to stick. You're going to have to start over and re-clean everything. Make sure that the dial backplate is clean. Remember, it's stainless steel. That's why I'm using the same flux I'm using for the wire lugs, to solder the wire lugs. And I make sure it's clean. Make sure the pin is clean. And like I said, don't apply the heat directly on the solder at first. Just heat the dial backplate. Notice I'm not going anywhere near the solder. Onto the flux, get it close. Load up the applicator. You can see the solder already starting to melt. Once the parts are tinned, then you can put the heat directly on it. But you got to tin everything before. I'll put all the flux. That was done. Back for the second dial foot. Torch is full of gas. You see the solder melting around it. There it goes. Stainless steel, the parts are tinned. You can apply direct heat. That's it. Wait a little bit until everything sets. Cools pretty fast because of the aluminum. It draws the heat down into it. So this one can come off. Put the jig away. Got a backplate with 2 dial feet. You notice that there's a little bit of flux that came through, and it went around the back plate a little bit through capillary reaction, but that's nothing. That's just clean up after. Once that's done, you take a good pair of cutters, edge cutters, snap the excess dial foot off. These little nibs will be sanded. I don't usually sand on my workbench, but for this too, let's do it. Back plate. Sanded down pretty flat. And you got two solid dial feet. That would fit on a 6497 or 6498. Just got to figure out what angle here. Right smack in the middle. Dial feet are sticking out a little bit too much, but that's just a question of snipping them off. You can either snip them off with the edge cutters like this, I made the jig holes a little deep, so I'd rather have too much than not enough. Once that's done, you've got yourself a back plate. You can put a dial on without using these little guys that I really don't like. That's it.